if there was one animal that through popular culture, either through people as a whole or through all of visual media, storytelling, whatever it is, that is always portrayed as a villain that isn't a snake, because we all know that's the snake, like, oh, he's a snake in the grass, he's that, like, that's the snake's always the bad guy. If there was one other animal that was always the villain for everything, that is the wolf. When we talk about wolves, they're always portrayed as the bad guy. In the movie The Grey that we're going to be talking about mostly today, and in everything else, even in like Beauty and the Beast, you know, the princess is running from the wolves and has to get rescued by the beast. Stockholm Syndrome, whatever may have you. But they're always portrayed as the bad guy through European society, and even Asian society too. There are over 30 subspecies of wolves across the entire world, and almost every single one of them is endangered. Now, we'll get back to that a little bit later, but, you know, in the movie The Grey, the wolves are the bad guys. Like, Liam Neeson is hired by this oil company to protect the oil workers on the fields from wolves because they think they're always going to be attacked. And then once they finish off the rig and they crash land their plane in the middle of the Alaskan or Canadian wilderness, they're hunted by this pack of wolves, which, as we continue through this video, I'm going to tell you that almost nothing about this entire movie based on actual wolf behavior is remotely accurate. But actual wolves are a really cool, amazing animal. So they are an apex predator, just like bears or mountain lions or tigers or actual lions. They're the apex predator. They're the number one predator in their ecosystem. That doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily have to compete with other ones or even fall prey to other predators like grizzly bears or things like that. But they play a very integral role with the environment. And their dynamic as apex predators is very unique among large mammalian carnivores. Most are very solitary with the exception of canids, i.e. wild dogs. And even then, quite a few of them are very solitary, and even amongst wolves, they are very independent. But they have a really cool, interesting social structure, even while maintaining that independence, which the Grey gets almost everything wrong about.
The typical wolf pack is going to be a family group, mom, dad, and their young.
Yes.
Right. And again, like you said, they avoid inbreeding, and so that's why, you know, typically most people believe that wolves will produce only 1 litter a year. However, in Yellowstone and other places, of course, too, we do see more complex packs, right? A lot of those old studies where they said they only produce 1 litter a year, or wolves feed in a specific pecking order, all that stuff comes from captive studies,
Yes.
right? And that's very different from the wild wolves we see here. So like the Junction Butte pack, for example, they're a complex pack. So there's multiple individuals that are unrelated. So we see several litters produced every single year. And that's why these guys are such a big pack, right? So the average pack size in Yellowstone's around 10. Outside the park, it's around 4 or 5. But when you have, you know, 3 or 4 litters, you can get a lot bigger, a lot more quickly. And we have multiple complex packs in the park. Right? The 8 Mile pack is a complex pack. Typically, Wapiti Lake produces multiple litters. Junction will produce multiple litters. The Phantom Lake pack has produced multiple litters. I've seen it outside the park in the Missoula area when I used to work up there, and that's just pretty typical.
When we think about like this pack structure, you know, with like when they go in and send in the Omega first, because that's what happens when they first crash land. So when the plane crashes and all the survivors, they make a fire, they spend the night, and the wolves, they hear them howling, and then the first wolf comes in. One single wolf from this giant pack, theoretically, comes in, and they manage to kill that one wolf, and they call it the Omega. They send in the weakling. That's not how family and pack structure works, right? That's just, it doesn't work like that. They hunt as a group. They hunt cooperatively. There can be stragglers and omegas that will be you know, kicked out from the pack, but in an actual cohesive pack, be it a single family group or a larger, more complex one, they don't hunt like that. They hunt very cooperatively, and there is a very interesting dynamic that isn't 100% accurate based on what we all have thought about and known, because what we knew for a long time was either based on captive wolves in a very isolated, controlled setting, or just straight misinformation that we just didn't understand for hundreds of years. That's just how it went. wolves are 100% fearful of human beings. And when I say 100% fearful, that doesn't mean that there can't be conflicts or necessarily not negative interactions between wolves and human beings. It's they are a predator, which means that they are more conscious and more aware of altercations that could result in them being harmed or injured or even killed, which would hamper their ability to hunt and provide food for themselves and their young. And so because of that, because of generational learning and continued, I mean, persecution is a strong word for it, but persecution for humans, wolves have learned to have a natural wariness and fear of humans as a whole. When it comes to them actually having these very small and few and far between incidences with humans, it's because of the same reason why almost every single one there is. It's because people messed up. And again, not to say that that's 100% our fault. They're apex predators. They're large carnivores. We are meaty for them too. That's how that works. But most of the time, it's not an issue with them. It's because of what we are doing. So, as mentioned before, there's very few incidences. It's less than 100 attacks or fatal attacks on humans in the last 100 years done by wild wolves. Wolf dogs is a different story, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So with all of these wolves, that these very few incidences, there's not a whole lot there to really justify the amount of wolves that have been killed over the last several hundred years when compared to other large predators across the United States. It's mostly just fear, misunderstanding, and a little bit of ignorance that we kind of self-impose a little bit, right?
Wolves are actually like among the most docile of large predators in North America, right? So we see very, very few wolf attacks. So in 26 years of having wolves in Yellowstone National Park, we've never had an attack. Same is true in Montana. There's never been an attack in Montana. However, they are large predators, right? And so Rick, who is the guy we've been talking to, who's a biologist, he's been working here for 25 years now, watching wolves almost every day. So he's seen a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, I was mentioning to him the other day, it's like, you know, wolves don't really eat otters either. But a couple of times they have, mm-hmm. right? And the same you have to give respect to a large predator. So there have been a couple of fatal attacks. Typically there's always an asterisk by them, like something along the lines of they were habituated to people. Like, you know, there was a case in Saskatchewan in 2005 where a young man who was walking alone near a dump where wolves were known to feed and people were probably throwing some food to them, was attacked and killed by wolves, mm-hmm. right? It's a scary thing for sure. There was a jogger up in Alaska too a few years ago, again near a dump where the wolves were possibly habituated. She was jogging alone at night or in the dark in the evening, and the wolves likely killed her there. So it can happen, but I will say in all the years I've interacted with wolves, and I've worked with them inside and outside of Yellowstone, I've never had an interaction that really freaked me out. So typically of all the large carnivores, even like mountain lions and grizzly bears are known to have killed people, wolves really are not something to be like fretting about. You know, if you think about the past however many years we've had of, you know, I guess European settlers being in North America, to have 2 fatal wolf attacks or a little more, give or take, that's not a lot. Right, so not something you should be worrying about. So, you know, like extreme anti-wolf people will say like, oh, they're going to kill kids at school bus stops. That's never going to happen.
Right. There are quite a few incidences of wolf dogs attacking people when compared to wild wolves. And again, this goes back to what I said before about basically it's kind of our fault. What happens when you breed a domestic dog that we spent generations breeding behaviors, instincts, and social interactions from the gray wolf to the dog, and you put it back to a wolf, you get a very confused animal that doesn't behave the way we want them to. So you have a wolf that's very independent, very bold in its social structure. Once it hits sexual maturity, it's very fearful, it's very wary, very reactive. And then you have a dog who most of the time is meant to work with us, to please us, to look to us for guidance and direction. That's how that works. So when you put them together, you get an animal that usually will look like a wolf, but behaves not necessarily like a dog. And as in the case here at Mission Wolf, very few of them actually have the ability to interact with people on a regular basis. Most are very wolf-like in behavior. They're very wary. They're very unsocial. They don't like to be around people, and usually even ones that they see on a daily basis, they will move back far away unless it's ones they feel very comfortable with, even though they see them every single day for years on end. The ambassador wolves that you see interacting with us were ones that came to Mission Wolf that came in as very young puppies and had no trauma in their past, and this is what allows them to be the very rare instances, the 1%ers of the wolf dogs that they're more okay with people. And even then, it's not 100% all the time. There used to be a couple other ambassador wolves that one had to be separated out because as she hit sexual maturity, she started to force her role and become the alpha of the pack, which resulted in several bad, fights essentially. So she had to be removed, and even when she steals people, she still is very excited and wants to interact with them, but it's too much for people. She's too much of a wolf for that. And even the two that are here, they are still very wolf-like in their behavior. Once this initial meeting's over, they're done. They move away. They don't care. They don't like the continued thing. If they don't want to interact with people, they move away. They don't like the continuous pets unless they want that. So it's this very odd behavior that when people get involved with that and they try to force it, that's when you result in bad occurrences and things like that. I'm hoping that between me and what Jeremy got across with this before is that everything about the gray really is misinformation. They are very wary, fearful creatures that, at least as far as where it goes to with people. When people go out hiking, even in wolf country, it's always you have to be aware of bears, you have to be aware of mountain lions. Wolves do stay away from people, and even if someone were to encroach in one of their rendezvous sites or even one of their den sites, more than likely they would just hunker down and defend their pups if they had them at the time. Otherwise, they would just slink out of sight and avoid conflict. More than likely, high 90 percentile. It's not really something that happens very often. Yes, they still need to be given their respect, just like every other animal on this list that we talked about during the whole group of October. We talked about monster fact versus fiction. But for a pack of wolves to travel miles from their rendezvous site or den site, whatever may have you, and systematically, like a predator monster movie, just hunt them down one by one, it's not wolf behavior. It's not accurate at all. And so the gray is 100% fiction. And just like almost every other depiction of wolves in modern media and storytelling, it's also fiction. They're still predators. They still have to be given their due respect, just like we need to give each other due respect. But this movie has been busted. Hopefully you enjoyed the video here. If you did like this, I know it's a far cry from reptiles, although I did still manage to tie that in there with the snake at the beginning, right? Yay! We actually have a whole lot more from our talk with Jeremy in Yellowstone, so we're going to have a whole other video of speaking with him about the wolves in Yellowstone specifically, if you're really interested in that. If not, we're going to get back more towards our regular reptile programming now that October is over. And I'm really hoping that you guys enjoyed these videos. We put a lot of work and effort to these, actually usually more than we do in the regular reptile videos that we do. Like, there's a whole lot more that we put into this. This has been quite an undertaking, and it's been really fun but very stressful. So I'm hoping that at least a couple people out there do really enjoy and appreciate these things. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know down below. Just keep it civil, please. And again, try to avoid the hot topic button subject with wolves right now. And again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a happy and safe Halloween. We'll check you next time for more reptile content. We got a bunch of really crazy stuff coming up. And again, and I'm talking to you, Austin, the full house tour, the full species tour, it's coming, but it's going to be a lot of it. So stay tuned, and we'll check you next time.